the General Agreement on Trade in Services, which the EU is a party to. It's a subset of the World Trade Organization. And the way it works is that the Union, like every other signatory to the General Agreement on Trade in Services, tables sectoral requests to other countries. So it asks other countries to open up its telecom sector, or its energy sector, or its financial sector, whatever it might be, to access for European firms. And there's some kind of quid pro quo. So, for example, in 2002, the EU tabled requests to 109 countries in a request that each government open certain specified service sectors up to competition from EU firms. Those requests largely originate from a group called the European Services Forum, which is a European business lobby group. So it's an area where there's a very direct organic link between corporate lobbying and EU requests. As with most trade policy, these requests were not initially made public, but they were subsequently leaked. And the World Development Movement, a development organisation, analysing those requests, concluded that the EU's negotiating stance was targeting, contrary to claims, it was actually targeting some of the poorest countries in the world. So, for example, Mozambique had received 6 specific sector requests under that schedule. The EU was also, according to the World Development Movement, targeting countries where non-market-based delivery systems were in operation. And the reason it was doing that was very straightforward, because not-for-profit service delivery, whether public service or cooperative, was obviously limiting the commercial opportunities available to European firms. So, for example, Bangladesh's water sector had been targeted, which is actually run by workers' cooperatives. Likewise, sewerage services in the city of Dhaka. We just trying to be very specific. We are down to the nitty-gritty. We are down to sewerage in Dhaka here. There was also, likewise, a kind of a general trend in the requests of an attack upon the principle of public service provision. The water sector in Honduras, for example, the state-owned water company had actually performed successfully in recent years, but was being asked to open itself up to competition, potentially ruinous competition from European water companies. Actually, European water companies, and they're largely French and British, Suez, Vivendi, RWE, Thames, SOR, are quite significant players in this, and they tend to dominate the water sector worldwide. And water sector privatization is a big issue in large parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It's actually a big political issue. It's been one of the driving forces behind the resurgence of left nationalism in large parts of Latin America, Bolivia in particular. Okay, part of what the EU was doing with those requests, and still with these particular GATS requests, was it was demanding that if a country enters into a commitment with the EU, it's a binding commitment. It's a treaty commitment, which makes it very difficult to reverse. So, for example, India in previous years was able to evict the now discredited energy company Enron from the state of Maharashtra for environmental and other reasons. Now, one of the arguments that critics make is it could be very difficult for a country to do that in years to come if it has entered into a binding treaty commitment to open up its energy or its water sector to competition. There's also a general tendency towards trying to limit countries' capacity to regulate foreign investment. So, for example, the EU asked Malaysia to drop its cap or its ceiling on foreign equity participation in its insurance sector, and it asked Brazil to end its restrictions on profit repatriation. So, it's a reasonably straightforward agenda, and it hasn't gone away. To sort of semi-quote Jerry Adams, it hasn't gone away. The World Development Movement later obtained further leaked documents suggesting that in 2005 the EU was proposing compulsory quantified service liberalisation targets at the Hong Kong World Trade Organization that was taking place in 2005. They were seeking specific liberalisation commitments from developing countries again across a whole range of sectors. So I think it's probably the most startling example in many ways of a very ambitious and very far-reaching drive towards liberalisation. I use the word liberalisation cautiously here because, in a sense, it's not entirely about liberalisation. Yes, it's about opening these markets up to foreign competition, but it's also about locking in the policies to make sure that other governments can't change them. So there's an element of opening up but also closing down simultaneously going on here. That, by the way, and I don't want to get into a huge theoretical discussion, I think it's a mistake that we sometimes make when we talk about neoliberalism. We think about it as being a pure free market agenda, but it's not. It actually involves very, very active state policing in order to make sure that the agenda is locked in place.